But the other important one is to remember that we don't get stronger in the gym. We don't get muscular in the gym, right? Going to the gym, doing your boot camps or lifting weight, whatever it is you want to do as a stress, right? All that does is stimulate a strength response or a hypertrophy response or a fitness response. Your ability to then be able to demonstrate that, as in getting stronger or getting bigger or getting more condition, is dependent upon how well you can recover from that workout. So you don't get stronger or bigger or more condition in the gym. You get stronger, bigger, more condition at home, depending on how well you can recover from the training stress that you just put on the system.
Welcome to The Body Never Lies. I'm your host, Leela Lutz. Each week, myself and experts from around the world help you uncover the secret ways your body communicates with you to empower you in your own individual health journey. Mark Buckley is best known for achieving what many experts in the fitness industry thought was impossible: the amalgamation between the specialised fields of orthopedic rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, and personal training. As the head of musculoskeletal rehabilitation at the Lower Hutt Hospital in New Zealand, senior faculty member of the C.H.E.K Institute in San Diego, a consultant to professional athletes and sport teams around the world, including the All Blacks, and as the owner of a commercial gym in New Zealand, Mark has acquired the unique skill set that allowed him to develop the FMA Strength Institute. Today, Mark and I are going to dive into some more specific outcomes of putting on muscle mass, building strength, and applying training to a sport-specific goal, both for athletes and non-athletes. We're also going to chat about men's motivations for training and measuring whether their training program is right for them. Because, of course, the body never lies. Mr. Mark Buckley, welcome to The Body Never Lies. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So, Mark Buckley is the main mentor of mine in terms of strength training. So everything I know about strength training I've learned from Mark. He was also the first teacher that I had at the C.H.E.K Institute because he used to be part of the C.H.E.K faculty. But from there, he's developed his own strength and conditioning courses. And so everything I know about strength training has come from Mark Buckley. So I had to have him on the show, especially after our interview with Show to Virtue. And we had so many more questions about strength training, and that was really an episode where we talked a lot about female physiology and the response to training and understanding when we've overtrained. But now I wanted to ask Mark more about getting strong in the gym and also about how men respond to training and how they know they're doing the right amount of training. So I'll give the floor over to you, Mark. Tell us a bit about how you came into strength training and what makes you such an expert in it.
Okay, well, it's a great topic. So, just to give everyone a bit of a background, and, I'm going to be very open here because I'm going to share the good and the bad in terms of my experience getting into training, what led me here, to the point of being able to stand here today and share this information with students and stuff across the world. And it started off, it wasn't a very good story, So when I open up about how I got into strength training, I usually tell two versions. The first version was I was a young kid and I watched the Rocky movies. And I got all excited about the training and then the fighting and all that. And it kind of moved something inside of me and sort of pushed me in that direction. And then I kind of came across Arnie and pumping iron. And there was that scene, he talks about coming in the gym. I'm coming when I'm training, I'm coming when I'm at home. And he just made it sound really exciting. So there's some truth to that. That was kind of how I got into the industry with a lot of interest in that stuff. But the real story, which, is a bit more darker, was, I was in a very abusive upbringing. And my dad was very, very violent, and, he was the type of guy that would, hit first, ask questions later. So there was a lot of fear in the family. And I remember as I got older and started becoming to my teens, he started to see me more as a threat. And he wanted to treat me more like a man. So he got a lot more physical. So I got to the point where I felt this need to try and get big, try and get strong, not out of inspiration or wanting to better myself, but out of desperation, out of fear. I needed to put on some armor, get bigger, get stronger to protect myself from the bully. So that led me into pursuing, strength and conditioning and going to the gyms and stuff. And it wasn't long, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this, especially men, it doesn't take long before someone sort of introduces the idea of anabolic steroids. And at that time, I was like, well, because I didn't know much about that sort of stuff back then. It was, well, what's that going to do for me? And they said, dude, take this, you'll get big. So I'm like, stick it in me. That's what I'm here for. I want to get as big and I want to get as big as quick as possible. So, I started taking steroids. Luckily, I only did like one cycle. It wasn't something I got really seduced into doing long term, but it was very seductive because my body responded very well to it, and I got very big, very quick, and got very strong. And everything kind of bottlenecked to the point where, I was able to sort of meet my dad toe to toe and stand up for myself in a very unhealthy way. I wasn't really taking my power back at all. I was using force to overcome force rather than stepping into my power and being more of an empowered man, which we can talk about later. So, I kind of leave it at that, but, that's what really got me into the world of strength and conditioning. It was what I call, and tell the students, it was a low road approach. And I was very fortunate to meet some very wise people in my later years. Well, I shouldn't say my later years, but later on down the track, that kind of got me to reassess the path that I was traveling. One of the things we always say is that you can't give what you don't have, and you can't share what you haven't experienced. So as I was stepping more into the role of a coach now, I realized that, I've traveled the low road, and the low road is the only approach I can share with clients and athletes. So in a desire to be a better leader, because we talk about going from being a child to an adult to a leader, I realized that, to be a leader, you've got to get out in front of the problems and get out in front so you can lead from the front. So I had to really course correct my own life and start pursuing a higher road and traveling down that, and through meeting incredible people. Like the first really big influence I had that really helped me was C.H.E.K, who you mentioned before. And I really got to clean up my life and just walk a completely different path. And now I'm able to share that. So, I like to share that with anyone that's listening because, we all come into these things for different reasons. And a lot of people listening today might connect with part of my story and realize, the reason why I'm pushing so hard to train to be something is actually coming from a place of fear. And it's always good just to stop and realize that, you never really want to do anything out of fear. Because usually when you start pursuing things from fear, you tend to start wanting the quick fix. And, as coaches and trainers, I'm sure you've had this, Leela, we get a lot of people coming up wanting extreme results. And one of the things we always say is, you can get extreme results, but extreme results come by extreme measures. And these extreme measures tend to work against the body, not with the body long term. So, is that really what you want to do right now? And it's surprising how many people, when we connect with that and get them to see this, will still say yes, because I need that result, because I value that outcome over myself. So I'm prepared to engage in practices that are self-harming because I need to get that result. That's all that's important, because how I esteem myself is based on others or outcome. So I need to be seen this way. And I need to own the illusion I'm enough by looking like I'm enough. So we can, again, if you want, we can go into all that sort of psychology stuff as well. But it's interesting. So that's why I like to share my story, because I believe that, before we share this journey together, we talk about strength and conditioning and training and recovery. I think we should all start at the beginning and go, why? Why am I doing this? What is the reason that I want to get into strength training and all these sorts of other areas? Is it for the right reason, or am I doing it for the wrong reason?
It is really important too, because whether you could be fear of anything, right? For women, it's a lot of women, it's fear of not being enough if I don't look a certain way. For men, it's not fearing being enough if I'm not strong. Or it's really important to, for me, training was always about feeling better in terms of energy and feeling strong and more capable and self-empowered. I'm lucky I didn't have that experience of training from a negative perspective, but I don't worry, I've done a lot of other things in my life coming from a negative experience. That's part of the human experience, right? Yes. So how did you get into this proper, let's call it proper strength training? It's a bit of it's a bit of a funny term, isn't it? How did you get into, I know that you went overseas and you worked with some of the top strength coaches in the world. How did you come into your strength training?
Yeah, I was always just passionate about it, and I don't know why. I mean, because I was at school, I was a little chubby kid, and I wasn't very athletic, and I had asthma, and my diet was shit, and all that sort of stuff that we should be able to have a better understanding of. But unfortunately, growing up, we're not really taught how to have the right behaviours. So I was never an athletic or fit type person, but I just, like I said, there was the truth to the first part of the story, watching the Rocky movies and all that. I was fascinated with training. So I got into lifting and all that, and once I came out of that dark place, I kind of realised that, this was something that I was very connected to. My heart was I loved training, and I loved the idea of working with athletes and training athletes. So I wanted to learn more. And like I said before, I met Paul, and Paul kind of got me walking the high road, which was great. So I started healing my relationship with myself about who I was and about food and other things like that. So I was in a good place. So my philosophy has always been that, if you want to learn something, learn from the people that are getting results. So I just went on a quest, just traveling around, just meeting anybody that had a good reputation, anyone that was like really getting results in the world of strength and conditioning, because I wanted to be the best that I could be. So I always believe, if you want to be the best, then you've got to learn from the best. So I wasn't afraid to travel and pursue and find the best people. And yeah, it's a never-ending journey. You're always learning because things are always changing. But I think, just like Paul C.H.E.K was one of the greatest influences for me in health and my own healing, when it came to strength and conditioning, it was Louis Simmons. Now, I don't know how many people here will be familiar with the name Louis Simmons, but he runs Westside Barbell. And he's pretty much known for producing a lot of the top powerlifters. Now, if you watch his documentary, it's pretty freaky. It looks like they're training in a prison yard, and there's violence, and they're very... Yeah, I'll let you guys watch it if you want to watch it and form your own opinion, but there's a lot of intensity there, a lot of masculine energy and competition and stuff like that. And they're very, very driven. It's like they're prepared to live and die under the bar. So, I went over there, and I remember my arrogance when I was flying up to Columbus, Ohio. I thought, I hope I learned something from Louis, because back then when I went over there, he was more of just known for powerlifting, not everything that he does now. And I kind of, in my own arrogance, kind of thought, am I really going to learn anything from a powerlifter? But hey, whatever, I'll go check it out. And I was there for a week. And in that week, apart from feeling very, emasculated, because I realized, shit, I wasn't strong at all. I thought I was strong, but I wasn't strong. You walk in there and you see a guy who's in his 50s, box squatting. He had 200 kilos on the bar and around another sort of maybe 100 kilos of band tension. So again, when we talk about accommodating resistance, you'll see a lot of powerlifters and athletes squat using bands. So just imagine I've got the bar on my back, and you've got this big, thick band, which could be like about that thick, and it's tethered to the ground, and then they stretch it up and they put it over the bar. So now you've got this band that's trying to slam the bar into the ground. And it has so much tension, it actually, will force the bar down faster than the speed of gravity. So you imagine if I had one bar here without a band, the other bar here attached to bands, and I let them both go, the one with the band's going to hit the ground a lot quicker, right? Because the band pulls it down. So there's a lot of downward force that this band creates, and it's used for what's called accelerating the eccentric. So the faster down, the faster up. So there's a lot of athletes who use it for dynamic effort method or speed work. So, I'm seeing this guy who's in his 50s with 200 kilos on his back, about, like I said, another sort of 100 kilos of band tension at the top. And he just goes down, does like 3 reps, goes, bop, bop, bop. And I just walk in, I'm like looking at it going, holy shit. Because back in where I'm from, if you can squat 200 kilos, you're pretty strong. And I'm watching this guy do it with his band tension, but I hadn't even seen before. And I said, man, that's an impressive lift. He goes, well, I said, that's a lot of weight. And he goes, no, that's my light work for speed day. And I'm like, what? I know, it was like, so the week that I spent with him, it completely forced me to deconstruct and then reconstruct everything that I thought I knew about strength and conditioning. And to this day, that experience that I had with him, I'll never forget. It's just burned into my memory. Like, I learned so much in that week about strength and conditioning that really then shifted course and started moving me in a completely different direction. And that really was how FMA, when I launched FMA in 2009, it really got birthed from that. It was kind of like, if I had to sum it up, it would be if Paul C.H.E.K and Louis Simmons had a baby together. That would be FMA.
I've just got a really gross visual from that. It's all bald, isn't it?
Louis Simmons bald as well.
I know he is.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've got to get that out of my mind. Hang on. Hey?
Okay, I've got to be honest. So if Paul C.H.E.K and Louis Simmons had a baby that had my hair, that is FMA.
Oh my God. Oh my God. If anyone listening who knows Mark, he loves his hair. Anyway, so this is a good time to talk about what actually is strength, right? Because it's a term that's really loosely thrown around in the industry. I think strength and conditioning is a term that's loosely thrown around in the industry. And for the regular gym person, I think there's a real misconception of what strength is from gym culture and their personal trainers. And I guess a lot of people think that if I'm lifting weights, then I'm doing strength training, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's unpack that and explain to people what strength actually is.
Okay. So let's just start with a basic definition. So if you look at definitions out there, the one I like is from Vladimir Zatsiorsky. Like I love studying a lot of the Soviets when it comes to strength because they kind of know their shit. It's kind of like strength is the ability to exert force in a given situation. All right. So strength and force are equated basically. So strength is the ability to exert force in a given situation. So when we look at a given situation, we tend to break that down into, well, are we talking about a time-dependent or a non-time-dependent situation? So if I'm working with athletes, it's really important to know how they've got to display strength, because how they have to display strength dictates how I train them in order to be able to display that strength effectively. So when you look at a lot of athletes, so for example, say a powerlifter is one athlete, and then we might look at an Olympic weightlifter as another athlete, or a track and field athlete like a high jumper or a sprinter or something like that. They're two completely different environments in which they need to be able to display strength. So a powerlifter displays strength in a non-time dependent situation, meaning it doesn't matter how long it takes them to exert maximal force. As long as they complete the lift, they get the green light. So if it came down to you and I both benching 100 kilos, and I did it in, say, 2 seconds, and you did it in 3 seconds, I wouldn't win because I did it faster. All right? We'd both get the green light or a tie if it was a draw, because we both lifted the same amount of weight. So when you start understanding athletes, though, athletes don't have that luxury. Right? They've got to display strength in a very, very short time frame. So it could be as quick as, say, 0.18 of a second. They've got to be able to do something. Now, it takes around 0.4 seconds, roughly, depending on what you read, to be able to develop what's called maximal strength. So if I had a bar, right, like on a Smith machine, and it was just fixed so I couldn't move it, if I was going to do like a bicep curl, it would take around 0.4 seconds for me to develop maximal strength, like to be able to and hit that peak amount of force that I can generate in that movement. So you can see now that if it takes around 0.4 of a second to develop maximal strength or display maximal strength, and you're in a sporting environment, you've only got, say, 0.2 of a second to display strength, there's a deficit there. All right? You don't have enough time to be able to use all the strength that you're capable of. So with those sorts of athletes, then we need to, once we get their general strength level up to a certain point, we need to be very specific about how we train them, and we need to focus on methods that have what's called a high rate of force development. So simply speaking, the general rule of thumb is that once someone can, say, squat 2 times their body weight, then you need to split from that and do a lot more sort of like speed-specific, high-velocity power type work. Because generally with a novice lifter, as you go from 1 time their body weight up to 2 times their body weight, they tend to get improvements in all motor abilities, meaning as your maximal strength goes up, your ability to create force and your rate of force development goes up as well. So all your motor abilities tend to improve as you go from a novice to an intermediate. But as you get more experience and you start getting up to that high level strength, you need to start splitting your training into specific areas and start going, okay, I need to build strength in one block, but then also need to do speed work and power work and bring those things in if you're an athlete that needs to display strength in a time-dependent situation. So that's the first sort of basic thing. But then we talk about general strength versus specific strength. Now, what that means is that, again, a lot of people waste a lot of time investing in lifts and trying to build strength in movements that don't really carry over to improving their target sport skill. All right. So when someone comes to me, my job as a trainer is to go, okay, well, what's the training context? So we talked about strength, and I need to look at it and go, okay, so do we need to build strength in a time-dependent or non-time-dependent situation? And then what is the target sport skill that we need to improve? And what are we going to do in the gym that should have dynamic correspondence to improving that target sport skill? Now, a lot of big words there, but if I give you guys a quick story to make it real simple, hopefully we'll sort of lock in. Now, when we look at something like hammer throw, there was a famous Soviet hammer throw coach called Bondarchuk. And he was the first one to talk about the difference that I'm aware of between general strength and special strength. So back in the day, it was like if you're a hammer thrower, an Olympic athlete, it was all about getting really strong. And they used a lot of like heavy squatting and Olympic type movement, like the power cleans and all this. And some of his top lifters could throw over 80 meters, in the hammer throw. In terms of looking how much they could lift in squatting and Olympic lifting, they were considered to be weak. Some of the coaches were saying, your lifters are your throwers, your athletes are too weak. You need to get them stronger. And he was the first one that kind of looked at it and studied it. And he worked with like thousands of athletes and that. And he goes, here's the problem. Getting strong in certain lifts doesn't mean you're going to see an improvement in the target skill. So if you take something like the squat, and let's say we had 10 athletes, and I could just look at how much they squatted. And this is comparing it to these athletes being elite hammer throwers. There is no way you could look at how much that athlete could squat and get an idea of what their ranking would be or how far they could throw. So what he showed is that, the correspondence between squatting and hammer throw was around 0.196. So one is a beautiful correlation. So it was about 0.116. So basically that means that you can't tell shit from how strong someone is in the squat in terms of how well they're going to perform as an elite athlete in hammer throw. But then he talked about special exercises. So this is where they would take like a 10-kilo hammer and look at how far they could throw a very, very heavy hammer. And the correlation was about 0.824. So it was very good. So now what that means is that with those special exercises, you were able to look at how far they could throw and get an idea of how well they're going to perform and what their ranking is going to be. So he was the first one that said, so a lot of athletes are wasting a lot of time and energy putting into these general strength movements that's not really going to improve their target sport skill and give them any value once you get past that sort of novice to intermediate phase. All right? So that's how we kind of look at strength. Now, when we work with someone, we always start with understanding training context. So as I said, so what is their training context? What's the end game? Where do we want to get them to? And we kind of break it up into two levels. So you've got your athletes and you've got your non-athletes. And then we start talking about what's called GPP versus SPP. So GPP stands for General Physical Preparedness and SPP stands for Specific Physical Preparedness. So in the example I gave before, giving someone like a 10-kilo hammer to throw and giving them special exercises would be part of SPP. It's helping them improve their target sport skill. So if we look at athletes and non-athletes, very simply, the way that we kind of explain to students is that if somebody was going to compete with a barbell on their back, which is like a powerlifter or a weightlifter or a strongman in those events, then what we do in the gym would be considered SPP. It's specific to how they perform. It's specific to their competition. So if you're training a powerlifter, then you've got to make sure that you teach them the right way to squat, right? Because they have to compete with a barbell on their back. And there's a difference between squatting in gear versus squatting raw, benching in gear, benching raw, etc. So you've got to be very specific to how you teach them the squat and how you train that squat for competition. But if you're dealing with an athlete that doesn't compete with a barbell, like an AFL player, rugby player, MMA fighter, things like that, then nothing that we do in the gym is considered to be SPP. Right? It's considered to be GPP. It's just general physical preparedness. Right? And this is really important to get your head around because what we don't want to do is invest so much time in training them with GPP stuff in the gym that we smash their recovery and that stops them from being able to do what their SPP work is, which is the practice sessions where they're doing the technical and tactical stuff that goes with their sport. And I see this happening a lot with strength coaches. They overstate their position and overstate their value, and they make all the athletes training around what they do in the gym, which is GPP, and they're using approaches like maximal recoverable volume versus minimal effective dose, which I can explain in a minute. But they're really trying to get as much out of them in the strength work in the gym for an area that's just GPP, and off the back end of that, these athletes are getting beaten up, they're getting exhausted, and they're not able to put as much into their practice sessions and all that sort of stuff, and it's actually kind of detraining them. So it's important that we kind of bring all that together because that is what strength is really all about.
It is really missed in the industry as well. Like I had a female athlete come to me a few weeks ago, and her strength and conditioning coach, I won't say what sport she was in, but it's a good Australian New Zealand sport. Anyway, her strength and conditioning coach said that she had to lose weight to get faster.
Mm.
And so I put her on a calorie-restricted diet. And going through her training program, chatting with her, it was exactly the same as what you're talking about. Way too much in the GPP, so it's too much in the gym and not enough technical stuff in the core. And what she was doing in the gym was actually not program designed properly to actually get her faster. It was more heavy lifting and stuff like that. So, and she was in a sport where she's on a court for her whole game, right? So it's not a strength, she's not under a bar. So it's really, and I think it's really sad, especially in women's sport as well, is that women are getting broken down a lot because, and we're going to have some other guests on to talk about this, women are not small men and they don't train the same as men do.
It's a big topic.
It is a big topic. So, and there's a lot of male strength and conditioning coaches out there training women like they're men, and they're getting slower, and being told to lose weight to get faster is not the answer. So just some context.
It is crazy, because one of the things, you look back and you go, your job as a coach is to improve a target sport skills. So, I mean, let's get real. An athlete's going to come to you not to train you to ask you to train them for their sport. They're going to say, can you help me get better at parts of my sport, like improve a target sport skill, like my acceleration, or my jump, or my fitness, or my whatever it is, my conditioning, work capacity. So, when you understand that, it's all about, okay, well then I need to improve that target sport skill. That's what they're asking you to do. So you've got to have metrics around performance, because it doesn't matter if they go from a 100 kilo squat to a 150 kilo squat, right? If you don't see an improvement in that target sport skill, then you're not training them right. And this is why it's so important. I mean, I won't go into detail with it, but I'll just say this, is if somebody needs to improve their vertical jump for their sport, right? Yes, we know from the research that if we increase your squat, so your arse to grass squat, and you go from, say, 1 times your body weight to, say, up to 2 times your body weight, then yes, technically, we should see a positive carryover to your ability to perform in the vertical jump. But the squatting is not what makes you good at vertical jumping. It's practicing vertical jumping and practicing the jumping in the environment that you need to demonstrate the jumping in the sport that you're in, under all the stress and all that sort of stuff that comes with that sport. So yes, it's good to start building the motor, but you've got to practice the technique and improve the technique and drill the technique, and then go from a low stress or low stakes environment to a high stakes environment, so they can actually demonstrate that in high level competition. And I don't know how much you want me to talk about this, but there was a time when I trained an Olympic swimmer. Her name was Tony Jeffs.
I was going to ask you to talk about that swimmer.
Getting her ready for the Commonwealth Games. And, this was way back in the early days, and I had a big ask. They asked me to improve her performance in a very, very short time. I only had like 6 months, right, before there was the trials and stuff. Now, I learned a lot from that experience. So the first thing that it is, I analysed her. Like, in New Zealand, she was the fastest swimmer in the water over the 50-metre freestyle. Right, so once she was in the water, she was the fastest. But her starts were terrible. So she was really slow off the block. She would sort of disappear under the water a little bit, and she'd always come up behind the other lady's feet. So where they'd do the swimming is that she'd be in the middle, and she'd have the 2 fastest starters either side of her. And, when you look at the pool, you'll see, I think it's around that 15-metre mark, there's little flags like that. So she would always be the last one to cross those flags. She'd always be behind everyone's feet, but she was so fast in the water, she'd just up and go to the front. So we spent a lot of time working on her starts. So I analysed her starts. I saw what was wrong. I knew what I had to do to get her stronger, more explosive off the block, and how to change her entry and exit through the water, and how to hit the first couple of strokes. So to put it into a short story, straight off the bat, when we did the right training with her, instead of hitting the water about 1.5 meters off the block, she was hitting it around 4 to 5 meters. So she was way more explosive. She was coming out and she was hitting her first sort of stroke around the level of the flags. So she was on par to a lot of the male swimmers in terms of their ability to do good starts. So everyone was over the moon. And the head of New Zealand Swimming at the time was getting a little bit concerned about her other parts of her swimming, because we were doing things like dragging sponges in the water and all this sort of stuff, that he wanted to time her, because he just goes, she hasn't been training with our camp for a while. I know you guys are doing a lot of good things, but I just need to know we're on the right track. So after we've done a whole lot of training, I think this is about maybe 4 months in, we just finished a pool session. He comes with the stopwatch and goes, I just want to do some timing on it. And we were just about to get out of the pool because she's already done a lot. She goes, okay. So she does her start, and it was only Freiburg pool, so it was only around 33 meters or something. It wasn't a big pool. And the time that he clocked for her over that one length was something like 0.2 of a second faster than what she did before she won the bronze medal in the Commonwealth Games. I think it was like 10 years earlier or something, because she was old at the stage. She was going to be 34, which is very old for a swimmer. So everyone was just excited. I was like, man, she's faster. She never even got close to that in 10 years. So all eyes were on us. So we were all like feeling good. But when it came to the trials up in Auckland, right, the night before, the women that are competing for the 50 metres will do the 100 metres just to get used to the water and the crowd, and just it's like a warm-up thing. So gun goes, she took off. First time ever, she skims up, hits that first stroke under the flags, and all the top swimmers were behind her feet. But everyone was like, what the hell is this? And she did a casual 100 metres, and she almost qualified for the 100 metres, but so fast. And she wasn't even trying for the 100 metres. So now everyone's going, man, tomorrow, let's watch out, because the fastest woman in the water in New Zealand is now the fastest starter. This is going to be incredible. So everyone was hanging out for this. But now the pressure was starting to build. And this is where it started to break down. So they get 3 attempts. The first one, I don't know how this happened, but she didn't really break in her new Orca swimsuit thing. What do you call it? I don't know. Now. And she won the race. She just missed out from qualifying, and when she got out the water, it went, the suit filled with water. It wasn't a good fit. Yeah, I know. It was really bad. She didn't have time to break it in. Oh, that's right, because it didn't get there yesterday for the 100 metres, where she's going to break it in, and she doesn't really get a chance to really test it out. Bad mistake. So she had 2 more attempts, and now the anxiety was kicking in, because she goes, I was going to nail it in the first attempt. So the second attempt, I could see the stress levels coming up. Gun goes off, and she went back to her old start, and she hit the water about that 1.5, 2 metre mark, disappeared under the water, right? Came up, and she was way behind everyone's feet. Still won the race, but she missed qualifying again. She just missed out. And then the third time, it was even a bit worse. And because she was so powerful and so strong off the blocks, now she was hitting the water at that 1.5 a lot harder, disappearing under the water, going deep, and it was just nasty. And that's where I learned that, all this stuff that you can do with them doesn't mean anything if it doesn't translate over to being able to be performed in the environment they need it in, under the stresses that they're going to experience. Because the way that the mind works, or the brain works, is that there's around 8 sort of layers where we sort of store motor control and performance things. So when anxiety goes up or stress goes up, then you basically start losing access to all the information that's stored in the outer reaches of the motor cortex, right? The things that haven't been stored very well. As you start going deeper and deeper in, you become more reactive, more reflexive in nature. So this is why when I actually train a lot of fighters, 6 weeks of really good defensive work for an opponent, and then they get in the cage, and next thing you know, they're doing nothing that you showed them. They're throwing wild haymakers like they used to do. It's like, dude, what happened to all that training? Well, it's just because their stress and anxiety went so high, right? You hadn't done enough conditioning with it and programmed it deep enough, so now it was no longer available to them. As they become more of a reactive sort of fighter or a reactive swimmer, which is what we saw with Tony and stuff like that. So that's when I started to learn that, you got to look at the stress of the environment, because when you start getting an increased elevation in heart rate, that's a psychologically induced elevation in heart rate, right? If they haven't really locked this stuff in and learned how to use it, then you're not going to see it. So it's really important. So going back, when we train athletes, it's not about just squatting, getting strong, and getting jumping higher in the gym and seeing improvements in those metrics. We've got to go and stand on the field and go, am I seeing this translate? Are they actually getting faster? Is their acceleration over 0 to 10 meters improving? Their ability to lateral step improving? Their ability to scrum improving? Am I seeing this in their ability to fight, in terms of their work capacity and conditioning? I remember I trained a whole lot of fighters for a big tournament back in the early days, and this was back in the days where the general word was, when you look at fighters, it's not you look at the work to rest relationship of the sport, it's not an aerobic activity. So there's no need for long, slow, steady state aerobic training. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. We were doing a lot more high intensity interval work, which we talked about a bit earlier, as it related to the work rest relationships seen in fighting. And our fighters all got into the ring, and they looked really sharp. Like they were lean, they looked really fit. In terms of the testing I was doing in the gym, their fitness was through the roof. Their work capacity was through the roof. Their strength was really on point. Yet all of the fighters gassed out in the first round. And then they were like shit in the second round. And if I can't remember the numbers now, but we had like 9 fighters, and it was something like only one of them won. And the rest all got knocked out or tapped out because they were gassed out. And I had people come up to me in the audience going, I thought you trained them. I thought you said they were fit. And I'm like, yeah. I go, what the fuck happened? But then I realized, as I looked more into it, I started putting heart rate monitors on them, and I started tracking them, leading up to the fight. And their resting heart rate, like the morning of the fight, their resting heart rate was really high. And then when they go into the arena or the venue, right, they're sitting on like around 140 beats per minute, just going to the venue. And then they're downstairs and they're getting changed and all this, right? And then I'm looking at it and their heart rate's like 150, something like that. And they've got so much, and it's not physical, arousal. They're not warming up and all this. It's a psychologically induced elevation in heart rate, right? They're so stressed up here that they're getting a sympathetic response and their heart rate's going like this because of the anxiety and the threat. So by the time they got in the ring, right, they were already gassed out, right? Because they've had this sympathetic dominant state and elevated heart rate for so long, right, that they didn't have much gas left in the tank. So then they go in, and because of the anxiety, they can't tap into all the stuff and training that we've given them as their motor cortex shuts down and start going deeper and deeper into the things they can retrieve. So then they become a very reactive fighter, and it's just game over. So I learned a lot from that, going, man, all that conditioning does shit unless they can use that conditioning in the environment they need to be conditioned in under the stresses. So that's where we got a lot into stress inoculation training, where we started taking our fighters and go, you need to get ready to deal with the stress of the environment. So they would do their training and sparring at night with a lot of people around, drinking loud music, booing them as they walked out, to the point they just got inoculated to it. They go, what? This doesn't even freak me out anymore. And that's when we saw the difference. Now they'd go in, they'd get up in the morning, they were calm. They would go to the venue, their heart rate was a lot down. And even in the warm-ups, their heart rate wouldn't pick up until we started doing the focus work and stuff and actually got them moving to get them all limbered up and ready to go. So they could control their state a lot better. All right. And now those fighters were like machines in the gym. In the ring, they were fit, they were strong, they were powerful, they were on point. And that's where we saw everything come together. So that's the role of an S&C coach. It's about just going, what is my client asking me to do for them? And how do I actually achieve that outcome? Not make them look good in the gym and lift heavy and all this, but to improve the target support skill that they're coming to me for help with. Yeah, I'll stop there, otherwise I get excited and I'll just talk forever on all these different examples.
Okay, I'm listening too much. I forget sometimes that I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm interviewing. Pause button.
No. It's good. I think it's really important to have this context of what strength and conditioning is, because a lot of PTs throw it around. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, Yeah. And sometimes it's from not really knowing, not having worked with athletes and achieving results with them. And sometimes it's important for the general population too, to understand when they go and work with someone.
Yeah. Well, just one thing I'll add on that too, just quickly, and this is quick, but to put them in context, you got to be careful, because everyone, can throw whatever they want. I love it. Like when we look at a lot of the personal training industry, you'll see a lot of people going, I specialize in, I specialize in strength and conditioning, postnatal care, rehabilitation. They'll list all these things in weight loss, all the things they specialize in. And again, just to put that in context, going back to Louis Simmons, when I went up to Columbus, Ohio, right, this guy at the time was predominantly just training powerlifters. And I'm watching this guy, and he's been doing it his whole life. So he was in his 50s. He's been in the sport. It's pretty much his whole adult life. He just eats, sleeps, and breathes this sport, even though now he does a lot more sports. But he eats, sleeps, and breathes strength and conditioning. And he said to me, he goes, because he blew my mind. It takes a lot to impress me. And when I get that, I had like a man crush on him. I was like, dude, this guy's so smart. And he turned around to me and he goes, yeah, I reckon that I know probably maybe 40% of everything I need to know about strength and conditioning right now. And I'm like, what? And that's the truth, So when you see a lot of people going, oh, yeah, I specialize in it. It's like, you don't specialize in it. You have an interest in it and you might dabble in it, but you don't specialize in it. And you can't specialize in too many things, right? So when you start seeing people go, I specialize in this and this and this and this and this, well, then no, you're a generalist, right? You can't be a specialist in so many areas, because when you look at how we learn, we have knowledge. So we have knowledge, we have experience, and we have wisdom, or knowledge, knowing, and wisdom. So a lot of people have knowledge. So they pick up a book, they read a book, they watch a course, they go on YouTube, they watch things, and they get some information, some knowledge. And they go, that's cool. But then we've got to take that knowledge and get knowing. And knowing is when we have experience with that knowledge. So you've actually got to get out the room, go into the gym and try it and get experience with it, and try it with athletes and get experience with it and see what works and what doesn't work, and where you can step out of the lane and where you can't step out of the lane, right? And that's how you take something and you kind of embody it, because you have a lot of experience with it. And at that point, you then have some wisdom, right? That's where you have both knowledge and knowing about what it is that you do with people in terms of how you train them and all that. And that is something that you can't do quickly. You can't short step. It's about running the bases. So yeah, just be careful, because a lot of people want to go from zero to hero overnight, and they do a course and they go, oh yeah, now I specialize in this and now I do this. And just take a step back and just ask, well, what's your experience in it? What's your experience? And if you're a coach, what's your experience in terms of coaching other people? And where has that taken you and stuff like that? And just take a time just to check people and just make sure that they are sort of not just talking a big game, but when they show up, they can only play small. Just protect yourself from that.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And it's also for the trainer. Like, I've mentored quite a few trainers that tell me they're bored of X, Y, and Z. And when I look at it, it's like, well, like, for instance, you can't just do assessments and write programs and not actually stand there on the gym floor training people, seeing how those programs evolve and work for specific people and different. And part of being a good coach as well is understanding that different programs work for different people. Different clients take different cueing, different clients adapt to different environments, responses, that kind of thing. So to really, that's what I guess what you're talking about. You've really got to get in and have that experience, work with clients for a really long time. And I think we'll talk about this in a bit when we talk about different fitness models, but the importance of program design and having metrics and looking at what your program, what the results that your programs are actually achieving is a massively important part of learning. And a lot of people are not wanting to take the time to do that. Clients want, different programs every session. I love my trainer. They make up new programs for me every session. It's really exciting. I don't know what I'm going to get in my session. It's really exciting, but that is not going to produce goals because there's no specific adaptation, right? And then for the trainer doing that, I think that's where a lot of trainers get bored as well, because they're not actually seeing results with their clients because they're not doing program design. It's just about being the fun person.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're seeing that with the students that you have. Anyway, a bit of a segue, but this is where I wanted to get into talking about some of the fitness ideals, crazes that people go to. Shona and I talked a lot about HIIT in our interview, so I think we've kind of covered that. But I think coming from a male perspective, I'm still seeing a lot of men who love boot camp kind of style training, and then telling me that they're not losing weight or they're not getting muscle mass or getting strong from that kind of training. So let's just unpack some of the fitness crazes and talk about, now that people understand what strength is, I think a lot of men also want to know about how to build muscle mass and why they're not being able to do that in the fitness crazes that are out there at the moment.
Yeah. Well, think of the body, that the body is designed to adapt, and the body's kind of governed by what's called the stress recovery adaptation cycle. So to put it very, very simply, your body adapts to stress. And as long as it can recover from the stress, then you'll get a specific adaptation to the post-demand of that stress and post-demand of that stress. So let's imagine, say, for example, I wanted to get more tanned. Well, that's an adaptation in the body. So if I wanted to get tanned, I'd have to apply stress, which would be solar stress. I need to go out in the sun. Now, as long as I don't go out for a stupid amount of time and give myself a chance to recover from that exposure to the sun, then my body will adapt and it will get stronger, and I'll start to produce more melanin in the skin, and I'll start to look more tanned, right? So that's how it kind of works. Now, one of the problems we have, though, is that when it comes to strength and conditioning, that the body works the same way. So it's about stress, applying the right type of stress, giving yourself the ability to recover so you can get the right type of adaptation. Now, there are three types of adaptations we can get. You can get a positive adaptation, which is a good thing. All right, so let's say I want to put on more muscle. I train according to what is going to allow me to increase the cross-section of the muscle or hypertrophy, and if I have the right level of recovery, then I should get a positive adaptation where I start to see an increase in size in the muscle. Now, if I don't do that right, then I'm leaving myself open to the other two types of adaptations. Now, the other two are, number one, nil. So basically, I'm not putting enough stress into the body, so there's no need to adapt, so nothing really changes. So these are people that just kind of lifting weights and all this, but they're not going into enough fatigue to stimulate a stress response, recovering from that stress response, their body can adapt and become stronger and then bigger. All right, so there's the nil, and then the other adaptation is a negative adaptation. And that's when you put the wrong stress in and it takes you in the wrong direction, which is what we talk about with athletes, like spending a lot of time trying to improve a strength. And even though I might be adapting and getting stronger, it doesn't carry over to improve a target sport skill. All right, but so you consider that to be negative. But in this context, we're talking negative more being where the body starts to break down a little bit. So if I put too much stress into the system, I don't give myself enough time to recover from that stress, then I'll get a negative adaptation. I will start to get weaker over time, right? My body will start to crash. And we have a saying in FMA, which is, weaknesses break. So that's where you start to sort of predispose yourself to getting like an injury and fatigue and those sorts of things. So we've got to be very clear, because if you go back and you look at that formula, it's specific adaptation to imposed demand. So the body adapts to the right stress. So you've got to go, well, what is the right type of stress I need to put in the system to get the right adaptation? So going back to the sunbathing analogy, it would be, we see this a lot in gyms, where we kind of look at it and go, so hang on, so you're telling me that this is the outcome you want, but you're doing that? Like, that type of training doesn't make sense. It's the wrong stress, and you're not giving yourself enough recovery. So it'd be analogous to someone going, hey, I want to improve my tan. Okay, cool. So how are you planning on doing that? Well, I'm going to have a 20-minute ice bath every day because I'm going to give myself some really good thermal stress. And you're going to look at it and go, okay, well, that's cool. Like, ice baths are good. They have a place. And yes, there's thermal stress there. And there's going to be a positive adaptation at a physiological level, which is cool. But it's not going to give you the adaptation you want, which is going to be, I'm going to get brown at doing it. All right? So I know that, and people listen to that goes, yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, but we're seeing the same mistakes in training. We're seeing people that want to get brown, and they think that if they do ice baths, it's going to get them there. All right? So be aware of that. So, and that's how we'll talk about boot camps and stuff in that context. But the other important one is to remember that we don't get stronger in the gym. We don't get muscular in the gym, right? Going to the gym, doing your boot camps or lifting weight, whatever it is you want to do as a stress, right? All that does is stimulates a strength response or a hypertrophy response or a fitness response. Your ability to then be able to demonstrate that, as in getting stronger or getting bigger or getting more condition, is dependent upon how well you can recover from that workout. So you don't get stronger or bigger or more condition in the gym. You get stronger, bigger, more condition at home, depending on how well you can recover from the training stress that you just put on the system. And this is a big, big thing, because we're seeing so many people coming in who, like, we love to throw the word overtraining around, right? You're overtraining. Now, in my experience, unless you are a very, very top level athlete, you're not going to overtrain. What we're seeing more in the gym are people that are under recovering. Right? And the reason why I like to say under recovering is because it puts the focus on the word recovery, because that's what people need to focus a lot more on. It's about focusing more on recovery, not overtraining, right? Look at recovery. So when we look at how the system works now, right? I remember Paul saying a long time ago that, when you come into the gym and you go into the changing rooms and you take your bag off and you put your gear on, you don't just get to leave all your problems in the gym and come in ready to train. You bring all that shit in. So for the viewers listening, what that means is that the body summates stress. It doesn't differentiate stress. So when you come into the gym, right, your body is already responding to all the stress that's going on in your life, not just in the gym in terms of training stress, but everything that's happening in your environment outside of the gym as well. So if you're having a lot of financial stress, right, that's going to have a physiological consequence, right, which is going to push you into more of a sympathetic state. And if you're having sleep-wake cycle issues, and you're in a relationship, you're having relationship issues, and you're not eating very well, these are all stresses to the organism. And those stresses don't get differentiated, meaning, okay, well, your work stress is a 3 and your financial stress might be a 6, and they kind of compartmentalize these stresses. Goes, no. We take that work stress and then we take that financial stress, with that relationship stress, and the fact that you're not sleeping well, and the fact that you're not eating well because you eat a diet predominantly around food-like products, not real food, and it slaps us all together, and then that sum total is what drives the physiological response in the organism. And then people come in already in what we call a fragile state, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then they go into the gym saying, train me because I need to lose weight, right? Because I've been sold the lie that I'm not enough until I'm slim enough, and I need to be slim enough. So I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to be slim, meaning I'm prepared to engage in self-harm practices versus self-care practices, right? Then these people come in, and it's no wonder they get injured, they get burnt out, or they just plateau because the body just goes, time out, we can't do this anymore. So we need to put all that in perspective. So that's a bit about recovery. So then how we can use that model to talk about things like boot camps and all that, it's quite simple. It's like, well, what are you training for? Right? So what is the outcome that you want? And let's say that you are training for the right reason, not the wrong reason. So you're not the lady that comes in going, I'm not enough until I'm slim enough, so I need to do whatever it takes to lose weight. Or the guy like me that goes, right, I need to put on more armor and size. I'm training from a place of fear, and I'll do whatever it takes to get big. Let's say that you're one of the few people that come in who are training for the right reasons. Well, what is the outcome that you want? So when people engage in boot camps and things like that, the outcome that they usually want is that they want to maybe get fitter, maybe get stronger, maybe look and feel better. Those are the kind of things you hear about, like boot camp. You don't really get the people going in that go, I want to be a strength athlete, or I want to be a bodybuilder, which are more targeted, specific sort of approaches to training. It's more your general public that come in going, I want to look and feel better. Right? I want to lose weight, lean up, whatever it is. Now, can boot camps and that do that? Well, to a point, it can. So what I mean by that is the things with boot camps is when we talk about GPP and SPP, it's just general physical preparedness training. That's all it is. So a boot camp is nothing more than just general fitness training. It's just general. It's not specific. It's not going to take you anywhere specific. It's just general type training. Now, you take a novice, like general public, and you get them doing anything, well, they will get a training response, right? So if you get them doing push-ups and sit-ups and doing some runs back and forth and some squats, jumping and stuff like that, yeah, they're going to get a training response from that. So a general fitness program will give you just very general results. So this is why, you will see that people do things like F45, which is, a big thing in Australia, which is pretty much like boot camps inside. It's just very general fitness programs. You come in, there's video displays showing different exercises, there's instructors around, come on, you can do this and all this, and they move you around in a circuit. Now, some people enjoy that because what they want is just general fitness. They don't have any real goals that they're after other than, I want to increase my fitness and maybe lean up and feel better. But they like the group dynamic, and they need someone to motivate them because they don't know that they're all about outsourcing responsibility, outsourcing accountability. But they don't know how to insource this stuff. So unless someone's holding them accountable and motivating them, pushing them, right, they pretty much just start slacking off. So that happened, they kind of enjoy that type of training environment. But then when you look at anybody that's kind of running those sorts of models, you start to realize that it doesn't take long before results start to plateau. So like I said, you take a novice, like a general pop person, right, you can pretty much give them anything and they're going to get a training response. This is why a lot of the data on strength and conditioning has been so screwed up, because you'll look at weird things, go, athletes using a BOSU ball, squatting on a BOSU ball, improve their squat strength, Well, yeah, because they were a novice, they're a beginner. You get them standing there holding their breath and squatting, you're going to get a response. They'll respond to anything.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful with that. So it's just general training. Now, there's pros and cons. Like I said, some people can't afford to get more specialized training. So these more group options kind of fit their budget. Otherwise, they couldn't do something. And they outsource accountability and responsibility. So they really just want the tribe, like the culture, and having a mentor, like a coach there, motivating them, inspiring them and all this. And it kind of gets them going. But the downside to that, as we said, it's just very general. It's not specific. It's not going to get you anywhere in particular. And it's not going to be customized for you. So this is why there's a lot of injuries in those group training type sessions, because until you really get to know someone and you actually clear them for the lifts that they're going to do, the movements they're going to do, then you're kind of playing a little bit of Russian roulette. When you have these large people coming in and giving them all these different movements to do, right? You haven't really done your job as a coach, which is, once we understand training context, our main goal then is to manage the benefit to risk relationship of what they're going to do in training. So a lot of these big group classes don't really manage the benefit to risk very well. All right. So the context is just general fitness. A lot more trainers now are trying to step into that space, going, we need to qualify people a bit more, even for these general type training boot camps and things. So, we've got to manage the benefit risk of training, and they're trying to make it safer. So, that's fine. But then you get to a point where people often, I said, run on those models, you see after about 9 months, around that sort of mark, a lot of people start to drop off. So they've got to keep doing a lot of work to keep getting more people in all the time in these big groups. So, because people get bored after a while, right? And they start to plateau after a while. So everything has a place, but we just need to know what the pros and cons are so people can make the right choices for them. So if you want to get into boot campy type training, because you're somebody that outsources responsibility, you need to have someone holding you accountable. You need someone motivating you. You maybe don't have much of a social life and you want to be part of a bigger group and be part of a culture and stuff like that, then that may be something that you might want to look into. But go into it with your eyes open, knowing it's just general fitness. It's not going to be specific. It's not really going to give you the perfect body that you want or the strength that you want or whatever. And find somebody that at least knows how to take a moment with you to qualify you for the benefits risk of the movements you're going to do, so they can risk mitigate and protect you in that training. And then it kind of has a small place, right? And I know a lot of people that do that, and they kind of enjoy it. But again, they're not after a lot other than, I just want to enjoy it and I just want to get my fitness up and kind of feel a little bit better. But outside of that, guys, if you want to really achieve a certain goal, then training needs to be specific to that goal. So now we go back to adaptation. If your goal is hypertrophy, right, you're not going to get that in boot camp type training. Boot camp will give you increased work capacity, general fitness, and some strength. And yes, your body will change a little bit, but it's not the right training stress if your desired outcome is hypertrophy, where you want to be able to take your shirt off and have that look of twisted steel and sex appeal sort of thing. Which is what guys like to go for. You need to have a completely different training stress for that. Or if you want to become strong, so you're not so much concerned about how my body looks, I just want to become really freaking strong, then there's a different way that you've got to train. Because remember, adaptation is specific to the imposed demand. You can't put people in an ice bath thinking they're going to get more tanned. So it all comes down to what is the outcome that you want, because the outcome dictates the path that you have to follow to get there. So once we know that, the next important thing is the recovery. And I touched upon the word fragile before. Now, when we look at people...
Can I just interrupt you there? What I was thinking in that boot camp model before was that I think one of the problems with that is a lot of people get sold into the whole program of that. And the whole program of that is to a calorie-restricted diet and also training 4 or 5 times a week, because the business model of that training survives on people coming for, 3 or 4 times a week. And so this is where you're getting into that place where there's no recovery. So some of these places recommend, eating 1,500 calories, 1,200 calories, like under 2,000 calories and training at that level. That's not recovery. No. And training 5 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week, there's no way that you could work a busy job and eat 1,500 calories or less or whatever it is and recover from that. There's just...
No, not at all. And that's why I was going to get into the recovery part.
Yeah.
We got to do the layers. And this is where you see, there's some people are doing a lot of dumb shit out there. And this is why we say you've got to be very careful. You've got to look at the person that's running these things to make sure that you're in good hands. So once we understand the stress, let's say that you are someone that could get value, benefit from a general fitness program, right? Because it's going to kind of fit you. You don't have anything specific you want. You just want to be part of a culture. You want to look and feel a bit better, lose some weight, increase your fitness and stuff. You don't have to have a lot of money where you can really afford to go into one-on-one training or higher end type stuff. So let's say that this might work for you, right? Then we've got to look at recovery. Because remember I said, you don't get stronger, bigger, fitter in the gym. You get stronger, bigger, and fitter outside the gym, depending on how well you can recover from the training. So we know that the training stress, has to be specific to the outcome you want. Otherwise, you're having ice baths trying to get a better tan. It won't work. So we've got to get that right. But then we also got to make sure that we can recover from the workout. But remember at the start, I said, when we look at stress and how the body summates stress and it doesn't differentiate stress, right? Well, there's different stress. We've got stress that happens outside of training and we have stress that happens inside of training. So recovery is very important and it's a very misunderstood area. So it's not just about how well do we recover to the training stress. Because again, when you start doing high intensity interval work, if you look at a lot of the athletes that would do high intensity work, right, you can't do it long. Now, I remember when I was training athletes a long time ago, I was really interested in conditioning and stuff. And, I looked at like 400-meter runners. So if anybody needed to have that sort of anaerobic work capacity, it's the 400 meters, right? Because it's hardcore. But when you look at how much sort of anaerobic type work that they do in high intensity work, to sort of flood their body with hydrogen and get, improve their buffering to the hydrogen and stuff like that, they don't actually do that much. So when I started talking to a lot of the strength coaches who trained, these top athletes, they basically, most of their training is around improving the aerobic system. Right? And then as they get closer to competition, they will go into that very high intense training, which is this like HIIT training, high intensity interval work, because what they're trying to do now is improve their body's buffering capacity to the amount of hydrogen, like I said before, that's going to be produced running at that high intensity. But you can only do it for up to 4 weeks before you start to plateau. So it's something they bring in for a short training block right up to peak for competition. And then they go back doing predominantly slower interval works and improving the aerobic capacity in their base and stuff like that. So when you understand that, right, and you start seeing people trying to do all this high-intensity interval work, it's no wonder that they get burnt out because, A, you're not meant to do it, so many times a week after week after week after week after week. Like it gets to a point where it starts to plateau and you don't really get any more gain for the amount of expense because that's a very expensive way of training. Like it takes a lot out of the system. So it goes back to going, why are we doing something when after a certain point, the body adapts, it's such a big stress and you don't keep getting ongoing improvements. So these are things you've got to bring in and then take out, bring in and take out. So these programs that are just smashing people every session with high intensity work, it's not really serving them, right? It's putting them more into a stress response than anything else. So we're talking about recovery between the sessions. So you've got to be smart and go, look, we can't just keep going high intensity all the time, right? Because we're just playing roulette with people. It's not going to be if they break, it's just going to be a matter of when are they going to break, right? And we see this a lot. So you've got to make sure that you understand your training and you know how to recover from those bouts of training. So the same thing, guys, if you're in strength and conditioning and you're wanting to get stronger and you're coming in with full body workouts, right, which is a good way to train, but you can't handle anything more than about, say, 3 full body workouts a week. So we're not doing high intensity interval work now, we're doing more strength work and hypertrophy work. So anything more than about 3 full body sessions a week, you're pushing the boundaries of recovery. And you start trying to have a 4th one. Because I get people going on train 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week. Well, if you want to train that much, we've got to change the way that we're training you because you can't do that many full body workouts in a week, right? You're going to break down, right? You're pushing the envelope too much. So we need to be aware of training as it affects recovery, okay? And then we talked about, though, everything outside of the gym. And we've got to look at what's going on in that person's life because if you understand that your ability to adapt to training is dependent upon your ability to recover to that training, and recovery is not just about what you do in the gym, but it's what happens outside of your gym as well, then a lot of people come in, even though they might be doing the right type of training, there's so much stress going on outside of the gym for them right now, which is competing on recovery. Like it's putting a lot of demand on recovery, that what a normal person could handle, unfortunately for this person, is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back because they don't have any more real capacity to recover because they're already stressed out and the body's already, the tank's already on low. So we need to look at the big picture. This is why everything we do is this holistic framework, which is how you work with people. So I use the word fragile because the first thing we've got to do is go, is this client fragile, resilient, or anti-fragile? Now, this was terms I sort of borrowed from the Black Swan, or Dr. Nassim, who talked about economy and stuff. He talks about, fragile systems versus anti-fragile systems. And I like it because it applies to the body. So some people come in and they have these goals. I want to get bigger. I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. But when you sit down with them and you qualify them for training, like you start looking at, well, what's going on in their lifestyle, how much stress are they under? Because stress and how much stress you're under is what pushes you more to being fragile. Because a fragile system is a system that can't really deal with any more stress. So we get a lot of people coming in going, I need to lose weight and I can't stand being overweight anymore, blah, blah, blah. And they really want to achieve this outcome. But they're a fragile system, right? Their body can't deal with much stress because they're not eating well, they're not sleeping well, they haven't been training well in the past, they've got all sorts of relationship issues, all the stuff going on that you're looking at it going, man, your body's already tapped out. You're already sitting here in a state of under recovery, and you're asking me to train you, and you're asking me to put you through high intensity interval work because this is what your friends are doing and this is what they're doing in different clubs and stuff like that. But if we do that, then training, which should be a eustress or a positive stress, is actually going to be another distress on the body, and it's going to be the piece of straw that breaks the camel's back. Right? We actually need to do something completely different. Right? We need to start reducing stress and improving recovery and getting your body back to a place where now it is actually ready to deal with another stress, even if that stress is the form of exercise, which should be good. And this is what's being missed in the industry. So a lot of people think that because they're running businesses, and in my job, I get paid for results. And this is another thing. Everyone's like all the marketing influence in the industry right now. It's all about what are the results you can get? How quick can you get those results, right? So what are the results? Well, I get paid for delivering a result. What's that result? Helping women lose weight, or helping men get more muscular, or helping men get stronger. Okay. And then because I teach a lot of business stuff as well to trainers, we have this little analogy. We go, what's the formula for speed? So speed is distance divided by time. All right. So everyone knows that from physics. And you get your little triangle, you have speed there, distance there, time there. So like a little thing like this. Now, what is time? Who's the saying time is money? Right? Everyone, like time is money. So just take away the time now and put the word money there, like a dollar sign. So what is money? Money is distance covered by speed. So it's basically how fast you can cover a distance. So this is people's mindsets to goals now. It's like, okay, I get paid for a result. What's the result? It's to help you lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever it is, or get you fitter. Okay, so here you are now. This is where you want to get to. Here's the distance. All right? It's all about time because money is time. So how fast can I get you there? This is the mindset, because the faster I can get you there, the better I'm going to be perceived as a coach, as a trainer, right? The more people are going to come to me because I'm the one that gets results and gets results fast. That's how money comes into my business. So they're all seduced by, well, what's the fastest way to get people there? Now, if you look at it from a point of, well, the fast way is usually the low road, not the high road. All right, because the high road is usually the long road, whereas the low road is usually the fast road. It's extreme results using extreme practices that often work against the body, not with the body. So now people go, okay, so the fast way to get people to lose weight, which is what a lot of general public want, is to cut the calories back. So let's start pulling back on calories, right? Let's start introducing high intensity interval work. Let's start bringing in supplements like around in terms of diet pills, in terms of like thermogenics and things like that, that's going to accelerate their metabolism, right? Let's do all that, because we know if you take the average person, depending on how beat up they are, right, but you start pulling back on their calories and you start adding high intensity interval work and you start putting them on thermogenics and stuff like that, right? There's a lot of results out there that have been built around those approaches, right? But what people don't understand is that, yes, those extreme practices will get you there, but you won't stay there long term. It's not sustainable, right? And it's always going to come at a consequence. And depending upon how fragile your system is, going into that approach will determine how quickly you break. So some people, like in the fitness industry, will see women that have this very unhealthy relationship with training and food, who engage in those sort of practices, and you see photos of them on Instagram looking really lean and all this, and on stage looking good, right? But then what you don't see is what happens on the back end of that, right? Because it's not sustainable. So they tend to have these roller coasters of putting on weight, losing weight, putting on weight, losing weight. And then the more they do it, the more metabolic damage they get, and the harder it is to go, I've had so many women come up to me that have competed before going, I don't get it. What I used to do is not working anymore. Why not? It's because your body's tapping out. It's just rung the bell. It's thrown in the towel. It's done. You fucked it up, right? This is the consequence of your choice. And you knew that consequence was there. So it hits people. But then we have other people that are so fragile at the start. I mean, there was a story in Sydney, and it was a middle-aged executive. He's about 40 years old, 40, 45, somewhere around there. He was overweight. He went to the doctor because he was having a lot of negative health impacts coming from being in a very sympathetic dominant state. So the doctor said, mate, you need to get fit and lose weight. Otherwise, you're probably going to have a heart attack, right? Because all your health markers are all pointing to your high risk. So he goes to the gym. Now, being an A-type personality, like an executive, he goes, who's the trainer here that's known for getting the results fastest? Right? Remember, time is money. So they introduce him to this trainer. The trainer goes, this is the results that I've got with people. This is how I do it. And the guy goes, cool, I'll hire you. So he starts him off, puts him on a very low-calorie diet, right? Puts him on thermogenics as well to increase his resting metabolism and to burn calories without doing anything. And then in his first session, did some high-intensity interval training with him. Right? The problem is that he was so fragile, like his body had no more capacity to deal with stress, that when he did that session, it didn't end well, and he actually left the gym in an ambulance because he had a heart attack. And the poor trainer standing going, what the fuck happened? I do this with everyone. This has never happened before, right? Yet you were just lucky that it didn't happen before. But when this guy came in, he was too fragile. Remember, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And unfortunately, this guy's when was right in that moment because he was already so broken. He couldn't take any more stress. And you just took all that stress and dumped it on him. You turn eating, which is one of the most anabolic things we can do, into a stressor. Right? You turn his relationship with food into something that was stressing the system now, not building the system. So when we talk about recovery, guys, I talk about recovery, it's about going back to being a baby. Now, as a mother now, you'll know very well what that means. It's when you look at a baby, when they're not crying and pooping, what's the two things that they're constantly doing?
Eating and sleeping.
And sleeping. Why? Because their body's going through a lot of growth. So when the body's going through growth, we need to have a lot of sleep and we need to have a lot of food to be able to allow for growth. So I want you to think about training as a journey of growth, right? Because that's what growth is. And growth is about meeting resistance. We need something to push back against if we want to grow, if we want to get out the other side stronger than what we were before. So if we want to get a stronger body, we need to push back against resistance, which is weights. Right? If we want to grow in terms of our personal development, then we need to push back against resistance, which is healing our relationship with ourselves about ourselves, which we can talk about another time or later on. But we always need to go through growth, which is always about coming up against resistance, and then it's always about recovery. So if you want to grow, recovery is key. So we keep saying, if you want to embark on this journey, then you've got to go back to baby, which means sleeping and eating has to become very important to you. Right? You've got to be eating right. You can't take food, which is one of the most anabolic things we can do, sleep, which is one of the most anabolic things we can do, and turn those two things into stresses, which is what most people do. And we're in this really weird place where people glorify self-harm. People go, I only get 5 hours sleep a night, and I'm up working, making money. And I'm on thing going, you're saying that like it's a good thing, like you're proud of it? Because people are. They think it's something to be proud of, that I only need 5 hours sleep a night. Or last night, I only had 4 hours sleep because I was working. Like, that's dumb. That's not smart. Like, you're taking something that's part of recovery that everything is dependent upon. Like, everything in your system is dependent upon how well you recover, right? And you're playing Russian roulette with it. Now, I know some people that can ride that train for a long time. They can get away with not having much sleep, so having a lot of, circadian stress because they travel a lot. They can even handle a lot of food stress, eating shit food and things like that, right? Other people, you put them in that environment, they break down very quickly. So we have a different capacity to deal with stress. But the thing is I keep saying, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen, all right? So recovery is so important, and it's one of the least appreciated things. Everybody gets into this going, I want to value training because training is going to get me to that goal. And it's like, yeah, but the recovery is more important. And if you guys do a bit of research into the studies, you'll start seeing what happens when people are doing the same amount of training on the same amount of calories, so everything's controlled, but the only variable that's shifted is how much sleep they get. The people that get the right amount of sleep, and I'm not going to throw out a number because we're all different, right? People need different types of sleep and different amounts of sleep. But when people get the right amount of sleep, the results that they get are always better if they're not getting enough sleep. Right? They'll lose more weight. They'll get more cross-sectional increase in their muscle mass. Their strength will go up. Everything will improve faster if you get the right amount of sleep, if you get the right amount of rest and recovery, if you learn how to manage your stress levels, right? Then everything works a lot better. So, yeah, I think that kind of answered your question, wherever the question was and all that. But we're going to recovery and all this. But yeah, we're sort of seeing that the big problem. It's people are coming into boot camps, right? And we kind of clarified, okay, for some people it might be the okay thing to do based on how much money they're making, et cetera, et cetera. As long as they've got the right trainer that knows how to manage the benefits of risk of training and risk mitigate for them. And then you just got to make sure that you've got the right trainer who, A, knows how to risk mitigate, and B, appreciates recovery, who's not being seduced into the business model that time is money and results is about getting someone from here to here as fast as possible, because that's always going to seduce them into the low road approach, which is what you were talking about. And that story, it never ends well for people, right? Some people will get broken halfway through the journey. Some people might survive the journey, but then they have to deal with the consequences of that low road approach later on. It's never the solution, guys. So however you want your body to look, if you want to be fitter, healthier, and stronger, right, you can get there through self-harm, but you can't stay there through self-harm. Eventually, it has to stop. And that is when you lose everything, and everything just falls away, and everything you've been working for crumbles away, and now you're broken and fat and exhausted, and it's not a good place to be. So, yeah, trust me, the only way to get to where you want to get to and be able to stay there long term is to do it through self-care, self-love practices. It's the only way. So you've got to be prepared to take the high road, which is the long road, and go, you know what, it's going to take me longer to get there, but once I get there, I'll be able to stay there long term.
I think for those of you listening, if you haven't listened to the episode that I recorded with Josh Rubin, so this is exactly what we talked about. All of these things push us further away from feeling, but they push us deeper into our stress and trauma.
Yeah.
And Gabor Mate talks about people who have a lot of stress and trauma, how we actually get addicted to that stress and trauma, and then you can actually create more stress and trauma by dieting, training, not recovering, not sleeping, and like Mark says, it becomes like a badge that you wear, right? I've had a client recently in her journal. When you work with me, you have to journal a lot, because this is a journey of self-discovery. And so looking at when you eat, when you don't eat, why did you make the choice to eat or not eat? And a client of mine last week wrote in her journal, I realised that I'm addicted to the feeling of being empty from not eating. And unless you're prepared to, as a coach, go to those places with people, like, they're never going to get better. So for her, at the moment, it's not about training. It's about, she needs to eat food and get to the place where she can eat enough food to train. And she's one of those people that's broken now, because she's been to see that many trainers and coaches, and overtrained and underate and under-recovered for many years. So, yeah, it's really important. I think this is a good place, Mark, to move into. Like, for women, it's so much about, that I'm not good enough if I'm not lean enough. Let's talk about what it is for men. And I really want to talk about, I've looked at my husband. He's the same. He's used training when he's angry, and then he's got injured. So going to the gym like, I'm really angry, I want to burn off some anger, and then he's gone and got injured in those training sessions. So I think there are some similarities as to why we train and why we overtrain and why we under-recover. But I think between genders it can be actually quite different as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, but it's common in men, because men are kind of taught to not show emotion. So we become like pressure cookers. It's like, I got to get this energy out. I've got to get this energy out. if you look at the polyvagal theory they talk about with animals, when an animal has a stressful event, you'll see them shaking, all right? So I'm a big fan of shake medicine. It's really powerful. But, after you see if you've got dogs, cats, when there's been like a traumatic event, you'll see them, they're just like, they're shaking, like the whole body's shaking like this. Right? That's how they get the anxiety out. They deal with the energy, the emotion, the hormonal response to the stress response. Right? They kind of purge it, they get it out of the body because energy has to go somewhere. Right? And this is why dogs and that never hold on to stress, because they know how to get it out. They can even have a life-death situation, survive it, and they kind of shake it out. And then they can carry on again and not have all this anxiety and worry. So it's very important that we process emotions and we don't just trap energy in the body, because then we become like this pressure cooker. So, a lot of guys feel that the only way they can deal with what's going on inside of them, right, is to do something manly. I'm going to go lift some weight, something that gives me permission to feel my body, right? Because we don't like to feel. But if we go into the gym, then any time we get that mind-body connection is when we're causing pain, right? Because training is painful, right? It's not enjoyable. When you really know how to train, like that burn, I mean, you can tell yourself, the minute you attach to the burn can be positive. So you go, oh yeah, this is fucking burning, and this is a good thing, but it's not really enjoyable. Like when you put it down, you're like, oh, it's not the most comfortable feeling. So for guys, it's usually the only time they can kind of feel their bodies, and they go in going, this is a manly way for me to get anger out, to get emotion out. Because most guys, they're very familiar with the negatives. So they're very in tune with the negative emotional states, anger, frustration, right? So it's okay for a man, because it's socially accepted for a man to get angry. It's okay for a man to get frustrated, but it's not okay for a man to get emotional, to cry. Right? So we have some socially accepted, emotions, and others that no, men don't do that. So men are very aware of the socially accepted emotions, anger, frustration, rage, because they're kind of masculine. And then we kind of try to avoid the other ones, which is the feeling, the empathy, crying and those sorts of things, because they're the girly emotions sort of thing. So so many athletes, so many men will go to the gym to purge. It's to get that stuff out. But that's not the way to do it. So what we talk about is, you got to start improving your relationship with yourself, about yourself. Now, this is where we get into a lot of mental emotion stuff, guys. So please bear with me, because when you kind of connect with this, it's a game changer. It's so important. See, most men spend most of the time, and everything I'm going to say here too can relate to women as well, but most men spend their life having an outward focus, not an inward focus. So as a child, we're taught that we're of no value, but we can be someone of value based on the outcomes that we get and how other people experience us. So we have this outward focus where we're very driven by outcome in others, right? We need to get a certain outcome to feel significant, and we need to seek the approval of others and avoid the rejection of others. So we have this outward focus, and we're conditioned from childhood to have this outward focus. So as a child, we are domesticated. So mummy and daddy will domesticate you by saying, good job, bad job, right? Yes or no. And they often start using like a punishment and reward type system, meaning if you do a good thing, what we deem to be good, you'll get a reward. If you do the wrong thing, there will be a punishment. Now that punishment is based on what your upbringing is. Like in my upbringing, punishment was you get hit, whereas a lot of parents won't hit their children. But it's kind of based on that same belief of there's kind of like a punishment and reward to domesticate young children. Now, in the early days, children fear the punishment. So they will comply, they'll be very compliant because they're trying to avoid the negative consequence, which is the punishment. But it's interesting because as kids start to get older, they actually stop fearing the punishment, and now they start fearing not getting the reward. Because not getting the reward means you're not good enough, right? You're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you're not manly enough, whatever it is. So we have this outward focus where we fear not getting the reward. And the problem with that is we're taught that the only thing that's of value is what's outside of us, not what's inside of us. So now when I look at the reward and I go, I need to get that outcome. I need to be number one. I need to win this. And what you start to do is you position that outcome over your relationship with yourself about yourself, meaning this is more important than who I am, because who I am is defined upon the outcome. So therefore, in order for me to be a somebody, not a nobody, I need that outcome. So you have this very unhealthy relationship with yourself in relationship to the world, right? You're very disempowered because you externalize power. Power to you is dependent upon power symbols, money, title, status, reward, fame. Those are the things of value. And without those things, you're someone of no value. So this is how we start to see the world. So this is why people in the pursuit of these outcomes are prepared to sacrifice themselves. They're prepared to engage in practices of self-harm, because at the end of the day, it's about achieving that outcome. And they're prepared to achieve that outcome, meaning I'm prepared to win in the outer world, even if it means taking a hit in terms of my relationship with myself and my inner world. Because who I am on the inside is of no value. That's what's important. And this is why we see a lot of people, guys, that are successful, that have money, they have fame, they have status. So in the outer world, they have everything. But inside, they're spiritually bankrupt, right? They're depressed, they're unhappy, because they haven't healed that relationship with themselves about who they are and what's of real value. So they externalize power. And as you do this, you realize that power is in the invisible, not the visible. There's nothing outside of you that can ever make you feel enough, right? It's all inside of you. This is what inner work is so important for. So going back to men, a lot of men have been conditioned that way. So they have this strong outward focus, and they've kind of abandoned their relationship with themselves and who they are, because they've never done what we call inner work. And inner work is not woo-woo. Inner work is just taking the time to get to know yourself, to understand yourself. Because if you know self, then you can affirm self. So most people have no idea of who they are because they've never taken the time to get to know themselves. And everything to me really comes down to relationships. So we talk about the importance of relationships. Because when you look at when people are on their deathbed, right, they don't talk about stuff, right? They talk about relationships. Their biggest worries are, was I a good enough husband? Was I a good enough father? Was I a good enough friend? Like, you tend to start to connect with what's real when you're coming to the end of your run in this earth school, as we call it. And it's always about relationships. So we always start with, okay, so if relationships are important, then you've got to go all the way back and you've got to start by healing your relationship with yourself about yourself. So before you focus on, I want to heal my relationship with my wife, you've got to go, yes, that's cool. And that's good that you want to do that. But the starting point is to first heal your relationship with yourself about yourself. Because until you know self, you can't affirm self. And you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't know how to have a healthy relationship with yourself, you'll never have a healthy relationship with someone else. You'll have a codependent relationship. Now, I won't go too much into that, but it always comes back to your relationships. So going back to the thing with men and stuff is that a lot of men need to start by healing their relationship with themselves about themselves. And the way that I get men doing that is to go, look, whether you're spiritual or not, right? But we are physical and we are spiritual. And when we look at the world today, we have what's called the literal and we have the symbolic. So this is the first step that I help people in terms of understanding personal development, if you want for a better word. And that is when we look at what happens in life, the worst thing we can do is try to ignore the reality of life. So this is the problem with a lot of the spiritual teachings out there in terms of and self-help, personal development. They try to get you to have this positive mindset all the time. So a lot of men, maybe like your husband or partner, are you married? I can't remember now.
Not yet.
You're not married? Not yet. Okay, so your partner, all right?
It got me on a technicality.
So you look at your partner, he's probably been aware of that. And there's probably been a part of him, just like me, that goes, I want to fix this. Because men are solution-driven. And this is why we tend to piss women off, right? We get rid of the problem, we want to go straight into the fix. Okay, this is how you fix it. So we do want to fix things. So we kind of know that something's a bit broken, something's not really going to plan. So we kind of want to fix it. And a lot of us kind of look at, well, how can we fix it? And we see, this positive, be positive and positive psychology type stuff and all that. So we go, okay, I get it. So, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. But it doesn't work, all right? It's very hard when someone's having a crisis, so their partner's leaving them, to tell them to be positive, it's all going to work out. It's like, it doesn't. I've tried it before and it doesn't work. You try to tell someone who's going through a big trauma, be positive, have a stiff upper lip, it doesn't work. You end up getting a fat lip because they hit you. Kind of how it plays out. So we kind of know that trying to be positive doesn't work for many people.
But isn't that part of as well, is that when you go through a trauma, like the trauma is there to teach you a lesson.
Exactly.
And this is why people, when that whole thing about ending a relationship, what do they say? The best way to get over someone is to get under someone else, something stupid like that. But it is that people go from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship without taking the time to grieve the relationship and work through the trauma of why they attracted that person, why it didn't work out, what was their part in that breakup, all of that stuff. So being happy all the time is, focusing on the positive and having a solution for everything is an avoidance of that, of yourself.
Yeah. And I've done that. I've lived a big chunk of my life avoiding responsibility. And that's the thing, quite often trying to be positive all the time is about avoiding responsibility. Because everything happens for us, not to us. And we are responsible for everything that happens in our experience. Right? And I can talk about that in a second. But yeah, absolutely. So, we try to be positive and it doesn't work. So one of the things we get people to realize is that first you've got the literal. So when we see things, we've got literal sight and we have symbolic sight. So literal sight is more using your conscious mind, the part of your mind that sees the world as it is. We see violence, we see corruption, we see pain, we see suffering, because those are parts of the human experience, right? So, when you understand spirituality, you realize just because you're spiritual doesn't mean now life is going to be full of blessings. No. The universe is always going to give you blessings and challenges. One day you'll get a blessing, the next day you might get a challenge. But a challenge is an opportunity for growth, because life should be a spiritual journey of growth and contribution. So we need to continuously grow, because if we're not growing, if you're not growing, you're dying. So we're going to have growth. So when things happen, when challenges happen, sometimes life is going to kick you in the nuts, or for women, it's going to kick you in the ovaries, right? Don't ignore it. Don't go, okay, I'm going to be positive. No. Firstly, have literal sight and get it out. Like, journal on it. Like, accept the fact that you also are this physical person as well. And how has this experience literally affected you? Like, just journal on it, get angry, get upset, like purge whatever needs to be purged to get that part out. But the key thing is you don't want to live there, right? So once you act on a lower level to go, I'm so fucking angry, why did this happen? Like, whatever it is, and get the emotion out, like give the energy, let it come out. Then you sit and you do your next level of journaling, which is you go, okay, now I step into symbolic sight. And this is where I start to connect with why this happened for me, not to me. What is it that I'm meant to take from this experience? So if something was taken from me, right, why was it taken? Because things are never really taken. Things are removed to create space for something new to move into. So what could that new moving of that space look like for me? And you start coming at it from a different energy, because that's what it's all about. See, happiness is really about the one thing that we have full control over, which is the meaning that we attach to things. So experiences usually aren't good or bad. I mean, there are some that are going to be bad, but usually what we're looking at is what is the meaning that we attach to that experience, because that determines how it affects us or not, whether we actually grow from it or whether we sort of diminish from it, whether we step into the victor or we bow down into the victim. So symbolic side is so important. So it just allows you to, once you've got the literal side out of it and you've kind of purged that, to go, okay, why has this happened for me? What is the lesson here, right? How is this going to make me be more? How's it going to help me be better? How is this going to allow me to live the life that I'm destined to live today, and move forward from that? So that's a very important process. Now, when it comes back to the anger stuff, it's because guys don't know how to do that, right? They bottle up, they push down, they suppress their emotions. They don't want to feel it. And there's that saying that, you've got to feel something until it no longer needs to be felt, which is important. And what guys often don't realize is that you can't selectively numb out emotions. So if you want to suppress and numb out the negative emotions and push those down, right, you're also going to lose your capacity to experience and feel the positive emotions of happiness and joy and those positive things, because you can't literally numb out. You just start to become numb. And I've had to work with so many people that are stuck who can't feel anything. They can't feel pain, but they can't feel happiness. They can't feel joy. Like their life has just become flatlined, where they're stuck up in their intellect, living out of their heads, and they no longer feel. And that's really sad, because the experience of life is really feeling. That's what experience is what we feel as we go through this journey. So yeah, it's very, very important that guys realize that the manly work is actually the inner work. Because if you want to play a bigger outer game, you've got to play a bigger inner game. And you can't do that until you go into yourself and know self, until you heal your relationship with yourself about all the stuff that you've been suppressing, right? It's called shadow work in a sense, right? What's your timeline and what is it you've had to do in order to survive? And this is how I explain it to people. It's not a bad thing. Like, this is why I can talk about my story about the violence, the steroids, losing partners and all this, because I look back at it now as I heal my timeline and I realize that everything that I became through those experiences were not a bad thing. Even though I've done bad things, I realized that was who I had to become in order to survive the upbringing that I was in and to survive the experiences that I was having. But you get to a point where you step into being an adult and you start being responsible, and you look back and you go, you know what? That wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that my dad used to beat the shit out of me. And it wasn't my fault that my partner cheated on me and she did this to me. All right? It's not my fault that these experiences played out, but it's my responsibility to heal my relationship with those events. And healing my relationship is realizing that my dad never did that to me. He actually did it for me, right? He was in just as much as pain as I've been in, and he didn't know how to parent because he parented me the way that he was parented. He was abused as a kid, and you can only give what you've experienced and share what you have with other people. So that's why we shared that experience together, but it wasn't personal. It was very impersonal. And now I can actually go, so how did that actually work for me? And as you go back, it's amazing because you look at everything I have in my life right now, none of this would have played out unless I had every experience that I had along this journey. So I've actually become stronger and stronger and stronger as a man through all the experiences I've had, all the challenges I've had, as I've now realized they've happened for me, not to me. So I tell people now, I would not go back and change anything in my timeline, because the people that I can help now, the people that I can connect with, especially in coaching, when we talk about trauma and violence and relationships and all that, I can actually connect with them because I've been there. And because I've been in that dark space, I know what they're experiencing now. And because I've been in there, I can also help them find their own way out, right? So in a sick kind of way, part of me goes, I need more trauma, because the more trauma I get, the more I'm going to be able to help people as well. So, yeah, it's a good thing. I know, but yeah.
One last question, Mark. And, I think what the biggest takeaway from that big spiel that Mark just gave is that this is the reason why people are afraid of recovery, because it's when you stop and you have to feel. And that's what Josh and I are talking about a lot, is that you've got to go sleep, go baby, go sit at home, go be by yourself, connect with yourself. And a lot of people are afraid of doing it. And this is why they're training more than recovering. Jonah and I talked a lot about, pardon?
And healing is uncomfortable. It's not comfortable. And this is the thing, so many people do courses, read books, self-help books and all that. And they're really, right, they do that and nothing changes for them. Mm-hmm. It's because they own the illusion that they're doing something when they're doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Because the healing only happens is when you actually lean in and start doing the uncomfortable work. And everyone tries to avoid that. I'll just read another book.
There's a lot of people that do a lot of self-course, but it's all a doing thing. I'm going to do this course. I'm going to do that. I'm do, constantly doing. And it's an avoidance of, what happens if I actually sit quietly with myself?
Yeah.
But it's kind of okay because I'm doing self-help.
Yeah, sorry. So what was the last question?
So last question, Shona and I talked a lot about how women manage their physiological load, as we are luckily have a menstrual cycle, and our menstrual cycle is basically a report card every month of how well we're managing our recovery. What would you say, I mean, I know the answer to this, but for you to tell our listeners, what's the answer for men? Like, how do you know? You're not so fortunate as us to get a menstrual cycle. How do you know what's your measure of physiological load on a day-to-day basis? So
Yeah,
how do you overtraining, under recovering?
Yeah, it's basically, your body will talk to you through symptoms. So, when you're young, and again, we'll have to talk about your husband and also your partner. And what was the thing that he said to you this morning when thought of me popped into his mind?
He said, "Oh my God, I know you've got an interview with Mark Buckley. Tell him how fit and healthy I am. I woke up with a hard on and I'm about to go and do a massive poo."
Yeah. So we don't know whether it's the fact that he's recovering well in the hard on, or was the thought of me in the morning that brought that on. Right? But you get to know your body, and it's usually when you think about when you start to feel fatigued, what happens at a physiological level, right? You feel low in energy. You have loss of clarity of thought. Your mind's not on point very well. Your body's not working as well, and you just feel flat. So for me, it's always about, if I'm not feeling on point energetically, there's something amiss. So you should wake up in the morning, and in the morning, guys, you should feel ready to jump out of bed and start the day, right? You should also be ready to have sex if you want, because testosterone's up in the morning, so you should have an erection, right? It's very normal to wake up with an erection, and you should be able to have like a good bowel movement and things like that. So those are all good things. But if you're not waking up in the morning ready to jump out of bed and own the day, like, because you've got to win the morning to win the day, then there's something amiss. And you've got to start connecting with, where are you losing power? Where are you leaking energy? It may be that you're training too much, that you're just pushing the envelope too much, and you're just physically drained, and your recovery's not on point. You're not getting enough sleep, you're not eating well, right? So you need to just get more sleep, and you need to get more food, more healthy food into your body, because the more you work, the more you need to recover, and it might be something simple as that. But again, it could be something that has nothing to do with the physical stress you're under. It could be more mental, emotional, right? You're just not happy in your career, the job. You have these ideas of going from a job to a career to a calling, and you just feel like you're not on track. You're in a job that you're not enjoying. You're in a relationship that's not serving you, whatever it is. And that's where you're leaking energy, right? And that's what's draining you. So in the morning, you don't have this masculine fire where you just want to jump out and own the day and you're excited. It's just like, another day, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. Because now it's more about, you're not living your life's purpose, right? So it's really, again, doesn't matter what the stress is, the symptoms are always going to be the same, whether it's mental, emotional stress or physical stress. Your body is going to talk you through symptoms. You're going to feel tired, you're going to feel lethargic, you're going to lose the pop in your step, you're going to lose the arousal in terms of your erection and things like that. Like your body will start letting you know something's not in balance. It's your job to do the inner work and go, what is not in balance? Where am I losing energy? Where am I leaking my power? What part of me do I need to heal? Is it my relationship with myself about body image? So I just pull back on the training and stop doing stupid shit in the gym? Or do I need to heal my relationship with myself about food and come to peace with food and stop starving myself and stop looking at food as being this bad thing? Or do I need to heal my relationship with myself and about who I am and what I can be, and start course correcting my life and start leaning into a career or a relationship, that is more in tune with who I am and who I want to be in this experience. So that's why I love that you do journaling with people, because it really comes down to that. So yeah, that's how the body will talk to you in symptoms. But our job is to be the detector and go, you know what? I actually care about myself enough to know why I'm not living a life that's optimal for me, because I should be full of energy and full of inspiration and motivation. And I should be wanting to get out there and share my gifts with the world, because I want to have a life of growth and contribution. And if you're not experiencing that, then sit down, start journaling, meet yourself, and start doing the inner work, which is the uncomfortable work, so you can actually live that life you want. Because the more you change who you are on the inside, the more you'll see that on the outside. And that's when the magic happens.
So right. Absolutely perfect. So I just want to finish off, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure there's a lot of trainers listening who would love to learn how to do this work more. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening thinking, well, where can I work with a trainer like that? So 2 things. Mark, tell us about your courses, because now they've changed quite a lot too, which I think is really good for people to know if you're in the industry and you're in lockdown. Mark's focusing really in his business and helping trainers pivot their business to be able to work with people more online. And when you start to work with people on this level, you move outside of the gym. You don't need to be in the gym all the time. So it's a great time for you to step up to the challenge as a trainer and learn to work in this way. And also, I'll put in the show notes how to contact Mark Luxon. And if you're a general person listening to this and you want to work with a trainer who's doing this kind of work, then Mark Luxon, who's Mark Buckley's business partner, can put you in touch with all their qualified FMA coaches. So tell us about your course, Mark.
Yeah, just quickly, guys, because my wife's giving me the evil look because she's running late. It's FMA Strength Institute. So you can go on FMAstrengthinstitute.com. On Facebook, we have FMA Strength Institute as well, which is an open page. But yeah, we have this idea that we want to take the industry to a whole new level. And we're realizing that we all have to become good coaches if we're going to coach people. And the only way you can become a good coach is to become a good coach in terms of your relationship with yourself first. So you must first take on the role and responsibility of coaching yourself before you take on the role and responsibility of trying to coach other people. All right. So we really help trainers build something that goes from like a job to a career to a calling, as we help them align with why they're really doing this and what they want from this career, because it's such a rewarding career to be in if you're in it for the right reasons. And then we teach them how to actually build the business that's going to be the vehicle that's going to get them to their North Star. So it's about understanding all the mistakes that a lot of trainers make, and they're in a broken business model. So we kind of give you a much better model to work with. So you're building your business around your lifestyle, not your lifestyle around your business. It's so important to get that clear, right? And then finally, we then help build the person behind that business, right? Where we actually help you become the person you need to be able to show up, and create the business and be the coach that can add value and give people transformations and all that. Because a lot of people who have listened to this talk today might realize, holy shit, I need to do a bit more inner work. No one's really talked about it that way. I've never done that. Well, we kind of make sure that we cover that in the course as well. So you can be the person that can actually run the business and be the professional that you need to be. Okay, so she started now, so I have to go, guys. Sorry I'm having to jump off so quick, but I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, Leela.
Hang on, I'll put all that stuff in the show notes so people can find out about you and who you are. Thank you so much. That was awesome, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being on The Body Never Lies. I'll wake up tomorrow morning and think about him too. Okay. See you, darling. Bye. Bye. I'm Leila Lutz, and you've been listening to The Body Never Lies. If you haven't yet, please go to your favourite podcast app and subscribe, rate and review this podcast. All the resources and references from this episode are waiting for you on my website, leilalutz.com. Just click on podcast and look for this episode. Now join me next week for another episode of The Body Never Lies. Thank you so much for listening.